you. Thank you. Okay, so good morning. My name is Diana Laura Cueto. I'm a second-year PhD student from the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. Oh, sorry, at UC Irvine. And I'm going to talk to you today about increasing energy efficiency. Okay, so first, can anyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. So first, what's energy efficiency? Energy efficiency is the use of less amount of energy to provide the same or better products, services, or amenities. Or, as we learned in school, is the work we put into a system versus the work we get out of a system. So when we're talking about increasing efficiency, we're talking about how we want to get the most out of the energy we put into our system. But we can get 100% of it, and that's because thermodynamic laws tells us that somewhere in the process we're going to have losses. And we can increase efficiency by decreasing those losses, right? So I'm going to explain it a little bit better with this power plants. So first, we have a conventional power plant. And we're assuming that we are using steam to generate electricity. So we input energy into our system, and somewhere in the process, we wasted 60 to 70% of it. And we only get to use 30 to 40% converted into electricity. And on the other hand, we have a conventional heat and power plant. So in this power plant, we input the same amount of energy, but we only wasted 10% of it. And that's because we use the energy that otherwise would be wasted into other processes of the plant, like heating water or climatization. So in this power plant, it's more efficient because we used the most out of the energy we input into our system. And other examples of energy efficiency improvements are when we install insulation into our homes, we're actually saving 15% of our energy that would be used for climatization. And also, when we seal our windows and doors, we can save up to 7.5% of our electricity bill. And in all of these examples, we are saving energy, right? And by saving energy, we're actually cutting pollution. So what I'm trying to say is that all forms of energy efficiency can cut greenhouse emissions. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about how can we use energy efficiency to meet our greenhouse emission reduction goals. But first, let's talk about how is the United States doing right now in terms of energy efficiency. So, well, actually, I have not bad news. We are not doing bad. So usually when a government's, when a country's economy is doing really well, the energy we use also increases. And that's because we have more money to buy more appliances and thus use more energy, right? But in case of the United States, from 1980 to 2014, the GDP increased by 149%, while the energy we used only increased by 26%. And we can see in this graph how much does energy efficiency measures that we take had to do with this limitation in the increase. So here we have the actual energy we used in the time frame. And then in gray, we have the energy that we would have used without any energy efficiency measures or with the structural changes in the economy that also affects our energy use. And we can see that energy efficiency takes more than half of it, right? So yeah, we're doing good, right? But if we want to meet our greenhouse emission reduction goals, we must do better than this. And that's because the United States is the second world's largest energy user, just behind China. So yeah, we must improve our energy efficiency. And now let's talk about potential. How much greenhouse emissions can we reduce using energy efficiency? First, at the global scale. So this is a projection from the International Energy Agency, where the temperature increase is limited to 2 degrees. This is the scenario. So here they mentioned that energy efficiency could reduce global greenhouse emissions by 50% by 2040. And you know, we're not installing new wind farms. We're not sequestering any carbon. We're only using energy efficiency measures that already exist. And what about the United States? So this is another projection, but this one is from the American Council of Energy Efficient Economy. And here they mention that we have the potential to reduce our emissions by half by 2050. And if our goal is to be carbon-free by 2050, we could achieve this only using energy efficiency. That's great, right? But then how can we do it? How can we achieve this half of US emission reduction? Now let's talk about the actions. And I'm going to take by example the measures that they mentioned in this study. But I'm only going to talk about the 4 main ones. So here we have our baseline, which is the amount of energy that we would use without any energy efficiency. And here we have in colored how much does these actions influence the success of our efficiency case. So I'm gonna talk about the orange one, the vehicle efficiency, industrial efficiency and decarbonization, transportation efficiency, and buildings and homes. So first, vehicle efficiency. So actually we have really strict fuel economy standards right now and state incentives that have increased energy efficiency in recent years. But we must make these incentives and these economy standards stricter. Also, we need to invest in research and development of electric vehicles and hybrid trucks to make them cheaper, and they are getting cheaper and cheaper every year. Also, promote those electric vehicles. And if we're gonna use more electric vehicles, we need infrastructure to support that. And that's installing more charging stations. So in this sector, if we do all of these measures in the right way, we have the potential of reduction of 50% in the vehicle sector. About industrial efficiency and decarbonization. We could use strategic energy management, which is the use of management tools to reduce our energy use. Also, we could use new technologies and industrial processes, the use of new materials and manufacture processes that uses the least amount of energy. Also have a sustainable feedstock management, which is the use of the least amount of feedstock into our processes. And electrification, if possible, of all industrial processes. And we could achieve a reduction of 29%. About transportation improvements. First, we can reduce passenger vehicle miles traveled, which translate to reduce the amount of times that we travel in our private car. And how can we achieve this? Well, we can increase mobility options, We can walk more, we can use our bicycle, we can use public transportation, and we need a better public transportation to do that. We need the revitalization of urban cores and suburb areas, and that's make our cities more friendly to those other types of transportation. Have bike lanes, more bike lanes. Reduction in freight transport, we need to improve rail, shipping, and intermodal infrastructure, and that's the use of all forms of transportation like air and ground in a way that uses the least amount of energy for shipping. Improve management of supply chains, and that's the reduction of the miles that our supplies needs to travel. And we could cut emissions by 30% in this sector. Now, talking about buildings and homes. So there are a lot of energy efficient measures that we can take that we can use in our homes. And if we use all of them, we could reduce our emissions by 18% for homes and 23% for commercial buildings. We could increase this percentage by using smart control technologies, which is the use of artificial intelligence to reduce our energy use and manage that. Also, the electrification of all of the appliances into our homes. We could use an electric stove instead of a gas one, right? Also, assuming that almost all new buildings and homes are net zero or zero energy, we could have a reduction of 80%. And now I'm going to show you how this net zero or zero energy home looks like. And it's the dream of energy efficiency. So this is it. It has photovoltaic panels. It works off-grid because it generates its own energy. It has efficient lighting, double insulation, energy management, uses artificial intelligence. So it has everything, the top-tier energy efficiency appliances. So I looked at this and I thought, it looks so expensive, right? Yeah, you need to invest a lot of money to have a net zero or zero energy home. But that doesn't mean that that if we can't afford it, we can't do anything. We can make small changes into our homes that have big impacts into our energy use and into our carbon footprint. You can change your lighting bulbs for LEDs. You can, put more insulation, or you could use a heat pump as a heating and cooling system or water heating. So please make small changes that have big impacts. And so now, we talked about what the transportation sector can do, what the industry sector can do, but now I'm going to make more emphasis into what can you do. So if you have the means, as I just mentioned, please upgrade your home. You don't have to invest a lot of money into being more efficient. And also have in mind that every quantity of energy that you save is also money saved. So it is an investment. And your vehicle, you can also upgrade your vehicle. Electric vehicles are getting cheaper and cheaper every year. So if you have the means, please use electric cars. And use your consumer power. Please buy Energy Star appliances. So these are appliances that have the Energy Star blue label. And this means that this appliance comply with high energy efficiency standards. And please use your water power. So all of the projections that I just showed, when we reduce half of our greenhouse emissions with energy efficiency, they depend in a great way into having the right energy efficient policies. And you have the power to vote for them and to make them a real thing. You can vote for ending fossil fuel subsidies, increase investments in renewable technology and in electric vehicles, urban planning, public transportation, bike lanes, etc. You have the power. And also change the ways in which you consume. So we talked about energy efficiency, right? But we can be efficient in other ways of our lives, like we can be more efficient into how we manage our time or how we manage our waste. And I'm going to make a little parenthesis into waste management. So we all have heard about reducing, reusing, and recycling, right? But I think we use recycling as an excuse for us to keep using single-use plastic. And that's because we think that everything that goes into the recycle bin gets recycled, but that's not true. Only half of the things that we put into the recycle bin gets recycled. And the other half of it needs to be exported into other countries for them to treat them. But in recent years, and I don't know if you've seen the news, like those countries are not taking our waste anymore. And where is all of that waste going? It's going into our landfills and oceans where we don't want them. So instead of recycling, we must reduce and reuse and think about being zero waste. And yeah, so thank you. Please maximize your efficiency. There are a lot of ways you can make. Thank you.